The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the International Boxing Association headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland. Manny Pacquiao stood before the imposing glass entrance, his weathered hands adjusting the collar of his navy blue suit. At 56, the legendary fighter carried himself with the same quiet confidence that had once intimidated opponents in the ring. Yet today felt different. Today he was not here as a competitor, but as a man seeking to transform the very foundation of professional boxing. The automatic doors whispered open, revealing a pristine lobby adorned with photographs of boxing champions from decades past. Manny's eyes lingered on a particular image from 2009, showing him raising his gloves in victory after defeating Miguel Cotto. The memory felt both distant and immediate, a reminder of the journey that had brought him from the dusty streets of General Santos City to this moment of profound responsibility. IBA President Umar Kremlev approached with measured steps, his expression serious yet welcoming. The Russian official had been instrumental in orchestrating this historic meeting, understanding that Manny's involvement could reshape the organization's approach to youth development worldwide. Behind Kremlev, a small delegation of board members waited, their faces reflecting the gravity of what was about to unfold. As they walked through corridors lined with championship belts and Olympic memorabilia, Manny's mind drifted to the countless young fighters he had encountered throughout his career. He remembered the hungry eyes of teenagers in Manila gyms, their dreams burning as brightly as his own had decades earlier. Many possessed raw talent that could rival any champion, yet lacked the resources, guidance, and opportunities that could transform potential into greatness. The conference room overlooked Lake Geneva, its serene waters providing a stark contrast to the intensity of the moment. Spread across the mahogany table were documents that would establish the Pacquiao Youth Boxing Foundation under IBA's official endorsement. This partnership would create training facilities, scholarship programs, and mentorship opportunities for underprivileged young boxers across Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Manny settled into the leather chair, his calloused fingers tracing the edges of the contract. Each page represented months of negotiations, planning sessions, and sleepless nights, spent envisioning how this initiative could change lives. The foundation would not merely teach boxing techniques, it would provide education, nutrition programs, and life skills training to children who had never imagined such opportunities existed. The weight of his own childhood pressed against his consciousness. He recalled the gnawing hunger that had driven him to the gym at age 12, not for glory, but for the promise of a single meal. His mother, Dionysia's worried face flashed before him, along with memories of selling cigarettes on street corners and sleeping on gym floors. Those experiences had forged his character, but no child should endure such hardship to pursue their dreams. Kremlev explained the foundation's scope, detailing how IBA's global network would support training centers in 20 countries within the first 3 years. Local coaches would receive certification, equipment would be distributed to remote areas, and promising young fighters would have pathways to international competition. The program would also emphasize education, ensuring that participants developed skills beyond boxing that could secure their futures regardless of their athletic achievements. As Manny lifted the gold-plated pen, he thought about Jimuel, Michael, Princess, Queen Elizabeth, and Israel. His children had grown up with privileges he could never have imagined, yet they understood the value of giving back. Jinky had been instrumental in developing the foundation's educational components, drawing from her own experiences in community outreach. The pen felt heavier than any championship belt he had ever worn. This signature would not bring him personal glory or financial gain. Instead, it would create opportunities for thousands of young people who shared his hunger for something better. The boy from General Santos City, who had once fought for survival, was now positioned to ensure that future generations could fight for their dreams without sacrificing their childhoods. Outside the window, Lake Geneva sparkled in the afternoon light, its surface reflecting infinite possibilities. The ink had barely dried on the documents when Manny found himself alone in the IBA's archive room, surrounded by decades of boxing history. Kremlev had graciously offered him time to explore the organization's extensive collection while the legal team finalized the foundation's operational framework. The silence felt profound after the intensity of the signing ceremony, allowing memories to surface like waves against a distant shore. His fingers traced the spines of leather-bound volumes containing records of amateur championships dating back to the 1940s. Each book represented countless dreams, victories, and heartbreaks of young fighters who had stepped into rings around the world. Manny pulled one volume from the shelf, its pages yellowed with age, and discovered photographs of teenage boxers from the Philippines competing in international tournaments during the 1980s. One particular image stopped him cold. A lean boy, no older than 16, stood with his gloves raised after winning a regional championship in Manila. The fighter's eyes held the same desperate hunger that Manny recognized from his own reflection in those early years. The caption identified him as Isagani Santos, a promising welterweight who had disappeared from competitive boxing after this victory. Manny wondered what had become of him, whether poverty or circumstance had stolen another potential champion from the sport. The weight of missed opportunities pressed against his chest. How many talented fighters had been lost to the streets because they lacked proper guidance, nutrition, or simply the financial means to continue training? The foundation he had just established could prevent such tragedies, but it also highlighted the countless young lives that had already slipped through the cracks of an unforgiving system. Manny's phone buzzed with a message from Jinky, sharing photographs from their recent visit to a youth center in Sarangani province. The images showed children practicing basic boxing stances on a cracked concrete floor, their makeshift gloves held together with electrical tape. Their coach, an elderly man named Florencio, had been teaching them for free, using his own meager pension to purchase whatever equipment he could afford. These were exactly the communities the foundation would prioritize. Moving deeper into the archives, Manny discovered a section dedicated to boxing's social impact programs from previous decades. Many initiatives had started with noble intentions, but failed due to inadequate funding or lack of sustained commitment from governing bodies. The IBA's partnership would provide the institutional support necessary to avoid such failures, yet the responsibility felt overwhelming. He paused before a display case containing gloves worn by legendary amateur champions who had later achieved professional success. Among them were fighters from impoverished backgrounds who had used boxing as their pathway to education and better lives. Their stories reinforced his belief that the foundation could serve as more than just a boxing program. It could become a comprehensive youth development initiative. The afternoon light streaming through tall windows illuminated dust particles dancing in the air, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Manny reflected on the irony of his current position. The same hands that had once delivered devastating punches to opponents were now signing documents that would nurture and protect young fighters. The transformation from destroyer to builder felt both natural and profound. His thoughts turned to the upcoming implementation phase. Within 6 months, the first training centers would open in Manila, Lagos, and Sao Paulo. Local coordinators had already been identified, many of them former fighters who understood the challenges facing disadvantaged youth. The curriculum would balance technical boxing instruction with academic tutoring, life skills workshops, and mentorship programs designed to develop well-rounded individuals. As evening approached, Manny carefully returned the archive materials to their proper places. The stories contained within these walls had shaped his understanding of boxing's potential to transform lives, but they had also revealed the sport's history of unfulfilled promises. The foundation represented his opportunity to write a different narrative, one where talent would not be wasted due to circumstances beyond a young fighter's control. Walking back toward the main conference area, he carried with him the faces of every young boxer whose story had touched his heart that afternoon. The conference room had transformed into a strategic planning center, with maps of target regions spread across every available surface. Manny stood before a large world map, dotted with red pins marking proposed training center locations, each representing a community where young fighters would soon have access to opportunities that had once seemed impossible. The scope of the foundation's reach was becoming tangible, moving from abstract concepts to concrete implementation plans. IBA Technical Director Emilio Fernandez had arrived from Madrid with detailed architectural blueprints for the standardized training facilities. Each center would feature regulation-sized rings, modern equipment, classroom spaces, and medical facilities staffed by qualified professionals. The designs prioritized safety and functionality while remaining cost-effective enough to establish in economically disadvantaged areas. Manny studied the layouts carefully, remembering the cramped, poorly ventilated gyms where he had honed his skills as a teenager. The medical component particularly resonated with him. Too many young fighters had suffered preventable injuries due to inadequate supervision or substandard equipment. The Foundation's facilities would employ certified trainers and medical staff, ensuring that participants received proper instruction in technique, conditioning, and injury prevention. Regular health screenings would monitor each young athlete's development, addressing nutritional deficiencies and other health issues that often plague children from impoverished backgrounds. Financial projections covered another table, showing the Foundation's 5-year budget breakdown. The initial investment from IBA, combined with Manny's personal contribution and pledged corporate sponsorships, would sustain operations for the first phase of expansion. However, long-term sustainability required developing local fundraising capabilities and government partnerships in each target country. The challenge was significant, but Manny had faced seemingly impossible odds before. His attention shifted to the educational curriculum developed by Dr. Emilia Rodriguez, a sports psychologist from Barcelona who specialized in youth development programs. The academic component would provide tutoring in core subjects, ensuring that participants maintained their studies while pursuing boxing training. Scholarship opportunities would be available for exceptional students, creating pathways to higher education that extended far beyond athletic achievement. The mentorship program represented perhaps the most innovative aspect of the Foundation. Former professional boxers, successful business leaders, and community figures would be paired with young participants, providing guidance that extended beyond the gym. These relationships would help young people navigate challenges, set realistic goals, and develop the confidence necessary to pursue their dreams regardless of their chosen path. Manny examined photographs from preliminary site visits to potential locations. In Manila, a former warehouse in Tondo had been identified as suitable for conversion into the flagship Philippine Center. The building's proximity to several impoverished neighborhoods would provide easy access for children who lacked transportation. Similar facilities had been scouted in Nairobi's Kibera slum, São Paulo's favelas, and rural communities throughout Central America. The selection criteria for participants emphasized need over natural ability. While boxing talent would certainly be nurtured, the Foundation's primary mission focused on providing opportunities for children who had been overlooked by traditional sports programs. Academic performance, family circumstances, and community involvement would factor into admission decisions, ensuring that the program served those who needed it most. Technology would play a crucial role in connecting the global network of centers. Video conferencing would enable young fighters to interact with peers from other countries, fostering cultural exchange and mutual support. Online educational resources would supplement local instruction, while digital platforms would track each participant's progress across multiple development areas. As the afternoon progressed, Manny felt the magnitude of what they were creating. This was not merely a boxing program, but a comprehensive youth development initiative that could break cycles of poverty and hopelessness. The Foundation would provide structure, purpose, and opportunity to children who had previously seen limited options for their futures. The weight of responsibility was immense, but so was the potential for positive impact. Every detail being finalized in this room would eventually touch the life of a young person somewhere in the world, offering them a chance to discover their potential and pursue their dreams with proper support and guidance. The presentation screen flickered to life, displaying a compilation video that would forever change how Manny viewed the Foundation's mission. IBA's research team had spent months documenting the lives of potential program participants across target regions, creating a visual narrative that transformed statistics into human stories. Each face that appeared represented not just a number in their demographic studies, but a young life waiting for opportunity. The first segment focused on 12-year-old Marites from Tondo, Manila. The camera followed her daily routine, waking before dawn in a cramped shanty, helping her mother prepare food for sale at the local market, then walking barefoot through muddy streets to reach a makeshift gym where she practiced boxing combinations against a heavy bag made from old rice sacks. Her technique was raw but promising, her determination evident in every movement despite the inadequate training conditions. Manny's chest tightened as he watched her story unfold. The parallels to his own childhood were unmistakable, yet Marites faced additional challenges he had never encountered. As the eldest of 6 children, she carried responsibilities that would have crushed most adults. Her father had abandoned the family 2 years earlier, leaving her mother to support everyone through selling street food that barely generated enough income for basic survival. The video transitioned to São Paulo, where 14-year-old Joaquin navigated the dangerous streets of Cidade Tiradentes. His natural athletic ability was evident as he sparred with older teenagers in an underground gym, but the facility lacked proper safety equipment and qualified instruction. The footage showed him returning home each evening with fresh bruises, his grandmother treating his injuries with whatever medical supplies she could afford. Joaquin's story revealed the double-edged nature of boxing in impoverished communities. While the sport provided an outlet for aggression and a potential escape route from street violence, inadequate supervision often resulted in unnecessary injuries that could permanently damage young fighters. The Foundation's emphasis on proper medical oversight and certified instruction would address these critical safety concerns. From Lagos, Nigeria, came the story of 15-year-old Aduni, whose exceptional speed and footwork had caught the attention of local boxing enthusiasts. However, cultural barriers prevented her from accessing formal training opportunities. The video showed her practicing alone in an abandoned building, shadowboxing against imaginary opponents, while dreaming of competitions she might never be allowed to enter. Her talent was undeniable, but societal limitations threatened to waste her potential entirely. The documentary continued, with profiles from Guatemala, Bangladesh, and rural Kenya, each story reinforcing the universal nature of the challenges facing young fighters in developing regions. Poverty, inadequate facilities, lack of qualified instruction, and limited opportunities created barriers that seemed insurmountable without external intervention. Manny found himself studying the eyes of each young person featured in the video. Behind the determination and hope, he recognized a familiar hunger that transcended cultural boundaries. These children possessed the same burning desire that had driven him from General Santos City to world championship glory, yet they lacked the support systems and opportunities that had eventually enabled his success. The research team had also documented success stories from existing youth programs, demonstrating the transformative power of proper investment in young athletes. Former participants who had received scholarships, secured employment, or started their own businesses served as proof that comprehensive youth development programs could break cycles of poverty and create lasting positive change. Statistical overlays accompanied each personal story, revealing the broader scope of need across target regions. Millions of children lived in circumstances similar to those featured in the video, their potential remaining untapped due to systemic barriers and resource limitations. The Foundation's initial capacity would serve only a fraction of this population, but the pilot programs could establish models for future expansion. As the presentation concluded, Manny sat in contemplative silence. The faces from the video had transformed the Foundation from an abstract concept into an urgent moral imperative. These young people could not wait for perfect conditions or unlimited resources. They needed immediate action and sustained commitment from those with the power to create change. The evening shadows stretched across Lake Geneva as Manny stepped onto the IBA building's terrace, seeking solitude after hours of intensive planning sessions. The crisp Swiss air carried the scent of approaching autumn, a stark contrast to the tropical humidity of his homeland that seemed worlds away. In his hands, he held a worn photograph that had traveled with him from the Philippines, a faded image of himself at age 13, standing outside the L&J gym in General Santos City. The boy in the photograph bore little resemblance to the man he had become. Malnourished and wearing clothes that hung loosely on his skeletal frame, young Manny's eyes held a desperation that still haunted him decades later. He remembered the gnawing hunger that had driven him to that gym, not for dreams of championship glory, but for the promise of a single meal that trainer Sardo Mejia occasionally provided to promising young fighters. Those early days had been defined by survival rather than ambition. Sleep came on the gym's concrete floor, using old boxing gloves as pillows and sharing space with rats that scurried between the equipment. The other boys who trained there faced similar circumstances. Children abandoned by circumstance, seeking refuge in a sport that demanded everything while promising nothing in return. Manny's fingers traced the photograph's edges as memories flooded back. He recalled Herminio, a talented 15-year-old who had possessed lightning-fast hands and natural ring intelligence. Herminio had been forced to quit training when his mother fell ill, returning to the streets to sell newspapers and support his family. Despite his obvious potential, the boy had simply vanished from the boxing world, another casualty of poverty's relentless demands. The story repeated itself countless times during those formative years. Promising young fighters would appear at the gym, display remarkable talent, then disappear when family obligations or economic necessity intervened. The sport's unforgiving nature meant that only those with extraordinary determination and minimal external responsibilities could survive the journey from amateur hopeful to professional contender. Standing on the terrace overlooking one of the world's most prosperous cities, Manny felt the profound irony of his current position. The foundation he had just established would provide the support systems that had been absent during his own development. Young fighters would receive proper nutrition, medical care, educational opportunities, and family support, luxuries that had been unimaginable during his childhood. The transformation from that desperate 13-year-old to his current status as a global ambassador for youth development felt both miraculous and inevitable. Every championship he had won, every obstacle he had overcome, had been preparation for this moment when he could use his platform to create opportunities for others facing similar struggles. His phone displayed a message from his daughter, Princess, sharing news about her university studies and expressing pride in his foundation work. The contrast between her privileged upbringing and his own childhood circumstances reinforced his commitment to ensuring that talent, rather than economic status, would determine young fighters' opportunities for success. The terrace offered a panoramic view of the surrounding mountains, their peaks disappearing into evening clouds. The landscape's majesty provided perspective on the foundation's significance within the broader context of global youth development. While their initial reach would be limited, the program's success could inspire similar initiatives worldwide, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond boxing. As darkness settled over Lake Geneva, Manny carefully returned the photograph to his wallet. The boy in that faded image had endured unimaginable hardships to reach this moment of opportunity. Now, that same determination would fuel his efforts to ensure that future generations of young fighters could pursue their dreams without sacrificing their childhoods or compromising their futures. The foundation represented more than a charitable initiative. It embodied the completion of a journey that had begun in poverty and would culminate in hope. Dawn broke over Lausanne as Manny reviewed the final implementation timeline spread across his hotel room desk. The foundation's launch sequence had been compressed into an ambitious 6-month schedule that would test every aspect of their planning and preparation. The first training center in Manila was scheduled to open in January, followed by facilities in Lagos and Sao Paulo within the subsequent 8 weeks. The Philippine center had already secured its location in the converted Tondo warehouse, with construction crews working around the clock to install regulation boxing rings, modern ventilation systems, and classroom facilities. Local coordinator Melchor Reyes, a former national amateur champion, had been recruiting qualified trainers and establishing relationships with nearby schools to ensure seamless integration of academic and athletic programming. Equipment shipments were being coordinated through IBA's logistics network, with standardized packages containing gloves, heavy bags, speed bags, protective gear, and training mats destined for each facility. Medical supplies and educational materials would follow separate distribution channels, ensuring that every center opened with complete operational capabilities from day one. The selection process for initial participants had generated overwhelming response across all target regions. In Manila alone, over 300 applications had been received for 40 available positions. The screening criteria emphasized need over natural ability, with social workers conducting home visits to verify family circumstances and assess each candidate's potential benefit from program participation. Manny studied photographs from these preliminary assessments, seeing reflections of his own childhood in the faces of prospective participants. 12-year-old Isadora from Payatas lived in a shanty constructed from corrugated metal and cardboard, yet her application essay demonstrated remarkable maturity and determination. 14-year-old Wilfredo from Smoky Mountain had been supporting his disabled father through scavenging recyclable materials, but his natural athletic ability was evident in amateur tournament footage. The mentorship component was taking shape through partnerships with successful Filipino Americans who had agreed to provide guidance and support to program participants. Business leaders, educators, and former athletes would conduct monthly video conferences and annual site visits, creating connections that extended far beyond the boxing gym. Corporate sponsorship agreements were being finalized with equipment manufacturers, nutritional supplement companies, and telecommunications providers. These partnerships would ensure sustainable funding while providing participants with access to professional-grade resources typically reserved for elite athletes. The Foundation's digital platform was nearing completion, featuring progress tracking systems, educational modules, and communication tools that would connect young fighters across continents. Participants would be able to share training videos, academic achievements, and personal milestones with peers facing similar challenges in different countries. As Manny prepared for his return flight to the Philippines, he carried with him detailed operational manuals, contact lists, and implementation schedules that would guide the Foundation's first critical months. The signing ceremony felt like a distant memory, replaced by the immediate reality of transforming ambitious plans into tangible results. The boy from General Santos City, who had once fought for survival, was now positioned to ensure that future generations could fight for their dreams with proper support, guidance, and opportunity. 3 months after the signing ceremony, Manny stood in the doorway of the newly completed Manila Training Center, watching as 40 young fighters participated in their first official training session. The converted warehouse had been transformed into a state-of-the-art facility that surpassed even his most optimistic expectations. Regulation rings occupied the center space, surrounded by modern equipment that gleamed under bright LED lighting designed to eliminate the shadows that had plagued his own early training venues. The participants moved with varying degrees of skill and confidence, but their shared enthusiasm was unmistakable. 13-year-old Amelia from Payatas executed basic combinations with surprising precision, her technique already showing improvement after just 6 weeks of proper instruction. Nearby, 15-year-old Crispin from Tondo worked the heavy bag with raw power that reminded Manny of his own aggressive style during his amateur years. Head trainer Norberto Valdez, a former Philippine national team coach, supervised the session with the kind of patient expertise that Manny had rarely encountered during his own development. The older man's approach emphasized fundamentals and safety, ensuring that each young fighter developed proper technique before advancing to more complex skills. Medical staff monitored the training closely, ready to address any injuries or health concerns immediately. The academic component was functioning equally well in adjacent classrooms where participants received tutoring in mathematics, science, and language arts. Educational coordinator Salvation Torres had developed a curriculum that accommodated varying skill levels while maintaining challenging standards for all students. Several participants had already shown remarkable improvement in their academic performance, with some expressing interest in pursuing higher education alongside their boxing training. Manny observed the interaction between participants from different neighborhoods, noting how the program was breaking down social barriers that typically divided Manila's impoverished communities. Children from Smoky Mountain trained alongside peers from Payatas and Tondo, forming friendships that transcended the territorial divisions that often characterized urban poverty. The nutritional program had produced visible results in just 3 months. Participants received balanced meals before and after training sessions, addressing deficiencies that had previously limited their physical development. Medical examinations revealed significant improvements in overall health markers, with several young fighters gaining healthy weight and showing increased energy levels. Success stories were already emerging from the program. 16-year-old Hilario had been recruited by a local high school's boxing team after demonstrating exceptional progress in both athletic and academic areas. 14-year-old Violetta had received a partial scholarship to a private school based on her improved academic performance and leadership qualities displayed within the program. The Foundation's digital platform was facilitating connections with participants in Lagos and São Paulo, where similar centers had opened according to schedule. Young fighters shared training videos, academic achievements, and personal stories across continents, creating a global community united by shared experiences and mutual support. As evening approached and the training session concluded, Manny watched participants gather their belongings and prepare for the journey home. Their faces reflected the satisfaction of productive work and the anticipation of returning tomorrow. The cycle of hope and opportunity that had begun with his signature in Switzerland was now generating its own momentum, creating possibilities that would extend far beyond anything he had originally envisioned. 6 months after the Foundation's launch, Manny returned to the IBA headquarters in Lausanne for the first comprehensive progress review. The same conference room where he had signed the initial documents now displayed charts, photographs, and testimonials documenting the transformation of hundreds of young lives across 3 continents. The magnitude of what had been accomplished in such a short time frame exceeded even the most optimistic projections from their original planning sessions. The Manila Center had become a model for youth development that attracted visitors from government agencies, international organizations, and other sports federations. Enrollment had expanded to 60 participants, with a waiting list of over 200 applicants. Academic performance among participants had improved by an average of 30%, while medical assessments showed significant gains in physical health and nutritional status across all age groups. Success stories continued to multiply with each passing week. 17-year-old Gregorio had earned a full scholarship to the University of the Philippines based on his academic achievements and leadership within the program. His transformation from a street vendor's son to a university-bound scholar exemplified the Foundation's power to break generational cycles of poverty. 15-year-old Araceli had been selected for the national junior boxing team, becoming the first female fighter from her community to achieve such recognition, while maintaining honor roll status in her academic studies. The Lagos facility had overcome initial challenges related to equipment delivery and local bureaucracy to establish itself as a beacon of hope within one of Africa's largest slums. Participants there had formed partnerships with local schools and community organizations, expanding the program's impact throughout the surrounding neighborhoods. The center's medical clinic had treated over 300 children for various health issues, addressing problems that extended far beyond the boxing program's direct participants. The São Paulo Center had developed innovative approaches to addressing the unique challenges faced by young people in Brazil's favelas. Social workers had been integrated into the program staff, providing family counseling and connecting participants with additional community resources. The facility's educational component had achieved remarkable results, with several participants advancing multiple grade levels within their first 6 months of enrollment. International recognition was beginning to follow the Foundation's success. The United Nations had invited Manny to speak at an upcoming conference on youth development and poverty reduction, recognizing the program as a model for sports-based social intervention. Olympic officials were exploring partnerships that could provide pathways for exceptional participants to pursue elite-level competition while maintaining their educational commitments. Corporate sponsors were increasing their commitments, ensuring sustainable funding for expansion into additional countries. Equipment manufacturers had begun developing specialized products designed specifically for youth programs in developing regions. Nutritional companies were providing supplements and meal programs that addressed the specific dietary needs of young athletes from impoverished backgrounds. The digital platform had evolved into a vibrant global community where participants shared not only boxing techniques and academic achievements, but also cultural traditions, personal challenges, and dreams for the future. Young fighters from Manila exchanged messages with peers in Lagos and São Paulo, creating friendships that transcended geographical boundaries and cultural differences. The platform's educational modules had been accessed over 10,000 times, demonstrating the hunger for learning opportunities among program participants. Manny studied a world map, now dotted with green pins representing operational centers and blue pins marking locations under development. Plans were advancing for facilities in Guatemala, Bangladesh, and rural Kenya, each adapted to local conditions while maintaining the core principles that had driven the Foundation's initial success. The network would eventually span 5 continents, creating opportunities for thousands of young people who had previously been overlooked by traditional sports and educational programs. Local governments had begun requesting partnerships to establish additional centers within their jurisdictions. The program's success in reducing youth crime rates and improving educational outcomes had attracted attention from policymakers seeking effective interventions for at-risk populations. Several centers were being planned in collaboration with national boxing federations, creating pathways for talented participants to represent their countries in international competition. As he prepared to leave Lausanne, Manny carried with him letters from participants expressing gratitude for opportunities they had never imagined possible. 13-year-old Pachita from Tondo had written about her dreams of becoming a doctor while continuing to box competitively. 16-year-old Celestino from Lagos described how the program had given him hope for a future beyond the limitations of his circumstances. The boy who had once slept on gym floors and fought for survival had created a legacy that would outlast any championship belt or athletic achievement. The Foundation represented the completion of a journey that had begun in poverty and culminated in the power to transform lives on a global scale.